Welcome to Let's Be Well Together podcast. We're your wellness check-in team. Join us each week or when you can. We enjoy exploring wellness concepts and reminding you to make time for wellness. This is episode 155.
Welcome back to the Let's Be Well Together podcast. I'm Noura Saad. I'm here with John Webster. What's on your mind this week, John?
I remember when we first chatted, you said that you like going for hikes, going for walks in the forest, things like the Bruce Trail. Earlier, you were telling me about a trail you found in Cambridge that you really like. And so I'd like to talk to you about just generally, I love hiking in the forest and that kind of stuff. Just a little simple conversation about what you like about walking in nature.
I think, John, mainly is just being disconnected from all of the technology. We're like always in front of our screens, our phones. So just being out in nature, especially this time of year with the fall and the leaves. It's so beautiful. It's a great time to just pause and all the colors. And for me, it's a very grounding space to just kind of sit with my thoughts and, maybe listen to some music, listen to a good podcast or an audiobook, maybe walk with a friend, although I don't do that too often. Yeah, walking is just so therapeutic and grounding for me.
Well, the old expression, if a tree falls in the forest and no one hears it, does it make a sound? Okay, I have an analogy. If Noura walks in the forest and doesn't record it on her phone and post it on Instagram, did she actually go?
Did it actually happen?
So are you telling me you're not sitting there with your GoPro or your iPhone and recording everything and taking pictures of you with flowers and leaves turning colors?
Okay, you caught me. I have done this.
Yeah, me too.
Just because my family back home in Egypt, like they don't get the opportunity to experience leaves changing colors and such. So I will take an occasional picture here and there, which I've had my aunt actually comment and said it looked more like a postcard. And I was like, this is my walk,
This is real.
This is
everyday stuff.
So yeah, I think we're so grateful and the phones will always be there, John, the check-ins and all those things. But yeah, I look forward to disconnecting.
One thing I really like, and sometimes I do this when I'm going to bed at night, and this definitely happens when I am out for a walk. And so if I'm out for a walk and I know it's going to be, say, an hour or 2 hours, then I've scheduled that time. And I really like starting the walk and starting out and going, this is what I'm supposed to be doing right now. And so I'm allowed to just immerse myself in this. And everything else can just be left behind, which I like to do sometimes at night too, before I fall asleep. Say, this is where I'm supposed to be for the next 8 hours. I'm supposed to be here. I'm allowed to relax and enjoy it. And I get that feeling when I'm walking in the forest.
Because you have to be so present. I don't know about you, John, but I sometimes tend to do things just very mindlessly. And something about walking is just a space to be more intentional. You're grounded, you're outside, you're breathing fresh air, which also I think really helps rejuvenate us. You touched on a good point, John, about, you're just present. If I can share, there was one time I was out walking down the Iron Horse Trail, and there was this little boy walking towards me. And he looked exactly like Christopher Robin out of Winnie the Pooh. And if I could just pause that moment, and I know people will take pictures and stuff. Obviously, I cannot take a picture of a little boy, but it was just such a beautiful moment. And I find walking really helps me come back to the present, right?
Because of talking to people, including on this podcast, a couple things have come to mind, and I've implemented them on walks and also on runs. It's really enhancing the experience. And one of them is giving yourself to the moment, obviously, like try and be present in the moment. But another one of our guests, Sharith Nithwani, was talking about the Hindu religion. And at one point he was talking about being childlike, not childish, but childlike. And we started to talk about that feeling of wonder, right? So if you see Christopher Robin on the path, that young boy, and he might see a squirrel run by and be filled with wonder, or you're in a park and the kids might see an eagle fly by and they're like, oh my gosh, an eagle, and you didn't even notice it. And so I'm trying to both pay attention and keep a sense of wonder. And an example the other day wasn't in a forest, but I was out for my normal run And the time is changing now. So whereas I was running in the sun the whole time a couple months ago, it's dark when I start. The sun's coming up as I'm running. And I was approaching a hill and it was full of wild grasses and the sun was just coming up behind me. And for some reason I realized, John, be present, look up. Because I was listening to an audiobook and I looked up and it was incredible. The sun was hitting the grass in such a way that the tips of the grass, the things with little oranges and yellows and reds were starting to light up almost like they were glowing. And I was like, oh my God, like this is just a normal weekday. I'm in a city and here I am looking at this site and it just filled me with wonder.
You touch on a really good point, John, that sometimes we look too ahead when the wonders are literally right in front of us. So, and I think again, running, walking, you come back to the present moment and enjoy the sun. It's not often that people get to walk in the early mornings, or as you said, the days are getting shorter now. So I'm sure you probably look forward to those moments and that time for yourself.
If I'm in the path in forest, like if I go on the Bruce Trail, for example, I will bring a camera and I will stop and take pictures here and there. It's kind of mind-blowing when I get back home and they're like, oh my gosh, these pictures are so cool. And so I do like that. There's even more opportunities when you're walking in a forest path or in a trail to see these little wonders than there are in the city. So that's definitely something that's really enhancing the experience for me is, and sometimes here's another trick I use. I think, imagine if I was somebody from like 0 AD or 1000 AD and somehow I time traveled to here and I was looking at the same site that I'm looking at, how I'd be like, holy cow, this is incredible. Like, look at these lights and houses and all this stuff like this. Or imagine I'm from another planet and I see the way the clouds form on Earth and the water, how the waves roll in and how different that is. And I just like these little things to think about that make me really appreciate the things that are around me. And again, whenever I go into nature, including walks, so much more.
Do you find that this is your favorite time of year to go for your runs or go for walks?
Yeah, so we are recording this in October. It is fall in Ontario. It is definitely my favorite time of the year. It is so beautiful out there. The leaves are changing colors. And I got to read about it because I thought I saw something the other day that said these are actually the natural colors of the leaves of the trees. And that in spring and summer, I think they have too much something and it turns them all green. And now they're becoming their true colors. Now, I'm not sure that's true, people. I have to Google it or whatever. But it is just so beautiful. And for me too, I'm running a lot. And the temperature is perfect because if it's too hot, it's hard to breathe. I get tired. It's harder to run, more strenuous on the body. So this is the perfect weather. The air tastes so fresh. The leaves look so beautiful. I absolutely love fall in Ontario.
Yeah, it's so much more fresh. When you go out for these walks, I feel you, John. Like I have asthma, so the summertime, forget it. That humidity outside does not sit well when I'm trying to go for walks. But I'm with you. I almost wish that we could just pause this time of year because I know as it gets colder, the leaves are falling. Mm-hmm. So you almost just want it to just stop for a bit because fall comes, but fall I find is one of those months that just goes by super quickly. I mean, it's almost Halloween. Yeah. So yeah, I just almost wish that we could just pause it for a bit.
Yeah, I like that concept because there's times in my life where I'm like, oh, why do we have to go through all the seasons? Why do we need a cold winter? Why? Ultimately, I love having the 4 seasons and it adds so much to my life. And also it makes me kind of respect nature that much more and makes me appreciate summer for one thing and fall for another thing and winter for another thing. But boy, if we could pause fall, because I think winter's a bit too long and fall's a bit too short. Now, who knows? Maybe global warming is going to force us into that position. Time will tell, I guess. But that's not the way I want to do it. I wish we could pause it in a way that was nice with nature and not hurting nature.
I'm with you on that. John, yesterday, actually, on my walk home, I found these beautiful, deep red leaves just on the ground. And My apologies. I'm not good with knowing the different tree names.
Probably maple.
Yeah, it probably was. But they were just so beautiful. And I think it had just rained, so you can kind of see the veins in the leaves. So I was walking around. Here I am, this just gallivanting with a bouquet of leaves in my hand. And I'm planning on doing some form of, artwork or something at home. Just, again, to have that piece of fall. Because, yeah, it just comes and goes so quickly. And we're just so blessed to be able to experience, the changes of seasons, and because not everyone gets to around the world. I know even in Alberta, they don't have the same trees that we do. I mean, even in the same country, they don't. A friend of mine was sharing that they don't have all the different types of trees. It's more pine trees and such. So they don't get to experience fall like we do here in Ontario. Yeah,
there's definitely areas in Canada, Ontario, Quebec, Northern Ontario. There are a whole bunch of different places where they have it and some that don't. Now, I can't remember, did you grow up in Canada or did you grow up in Egypt?
So I grew up mainly in Canada. So yeah, this time of year, I remember getting my costume for Halloween and such. So there's a lot of nostalgia to this time of year. I don't know. It's just with the movies and the music and the pumpkins. And yeah, this time brings me back to my childhood for sure.
Well, I was just trying to remember, because when you were a kid, did you ever take those red maple leaves and put them in a book and let them be flat, and then like months later you open it up and they're totally dried out and totally flat and they're still colored and you can make crafts of them?
Actually, funny enough, you mentioned that, John. That's exactly what I did with the leaves yesterday.
So in like 4 or 5 months, we can find out if they kept their color, and now you can use them for something.
Yeah, that's what I did right away when I got home.
Guests are giving their time, expanding our minds.
Today's interview is in the category of social wellness. We spoke to Gord Harris recently about the no-fault regime, psychological injuries, and more. But today I want to focus more on a social issue, why we shouldn't speed and why we should be vigilant to avoid driver errors. We owe it to other people. Welcome back, Gord.
Thanks for having me again, John.
Gord Harris grew up in Waterloo and obtained an arts degree at Wilfrid Laurier University, then a Bachelor of Laws and Masters of Business Administration degrees at University of Alberta. He worked in Alberta for 7 years, then came back to Ontario. His firm Harris Law is located in KW, and it's a highly respected personal injury firm, where he and his partners and associates and colleagues help people from all walks of life, typically acting against insurance companies or other corporate defendants. And he's dedicated to helping address issues and problems faced by people who've been injured because of others or denied benefits from their insurer. He takes satisfaction in knowing that he's helped someone find an acceptable resolution during a difficult time in their life. Gord gives back to the community in many ways. He's married and a father of 3 beautiful daughters. So Gord, I said we'd talk about speed, but in the context of motor vehicle accidents, maybe we can talk about speed and driver error. So you have seen a lot of motor vehicle accident reports. You've seen a lot of injuries. What would you say that most at-fault collisions are caused by? Driver error, speed, both?
I would say most accidents are caused by driver error. At least the stuff that comes to me and that I see. Speed is often a factor, but it's not the cause. That's what I would say.
So speed can exacerbate another driver error.
Speed affects reaction time, and it might prevent you from recovering from your error. And speed will definitely increase the amount of damages that are caused when you do collide with somebody. So when we talk about municipalities, sometimes will want to lower their speed limits in residential areas. And the idea isn't so much about preventing accidents as it is about limiting the damages caused when an accident occurs. In our community, John, we've got lots of roundabouts and we have seemingly more every year. Part of the rationale behind roundabouts is that usually you're not going very fast when you are going through a roundabout. So even if you do make a mistake and you hit somebody, the damage will be limited because we're not talking about a high-speed collision. So, it's a factor, but it's usually not the cause. That's what I would say.
Well, I wish that was true because I jog outside a lot and I basically avoid streets with roundabouts. There's one close to my house. It's scary. Like cars just whiz by. And then the problem is they're trying to get in front of the other guy who's trying to come through. And so they go faster and they don't see me. So anyway, I wish people would slow down on the roundabouts. That would make me feel a lot safer.
And a lot of it is relative and about perspective, because when you're driving a vehicle and you're going 40 kilometers an hour, you feel like you could get out of the vehicle and run faster. And when you're a pedestrian and somebody's going 25 kilometers an hour, you think it's a racehorse going by. So, I mean, it all really, you're right. It really depends on where you are and what you're doing. When I'm examining people in the course of a lawsuit and they're telling me they're going 30 kilometers an hour, 40 kilometers an hour, I'm often very skeptical because I know most people don't like driving at that speed, even when they should be.
There's a street very close to me right now, and there's a school on it. And there was a time recently where it had gone down to 30 kilometers an hour. It has a camera, so they've now put it to 40 kilometers an hour because of that camera. A couple things. One, yes, a lot of traffic stopped using that street because I think it frustrated people. But when I drove through it, I really could feel like at this speed, it would be much easier for me to avoid an accident. And also, even if, God forbid, a kid ran out in front of me and I couldn't stop on time, I would probably have stopped so much by the time that there was any contact that it would really lessen the injury. So I'm kind of sold on it now because I can see what a difference it would make.
Absolutely. You have more time to react, whether it's your error or somebody else's, and it doesn't take as much distance for you to stop. So, that's where speed comes into play the most.
Okay, so give us some examples. So if I wanted to send a message out to people saying, hey, I'm running around the city and I'm scared a lot because people do crazy things and I'm always trying to make eye contact to make sure somebody sees me and that kind of stuff. And it sure would be nice. Like, first of all, I should say that a huge percentage of drivers are super nice, great drivers, really respectful, but that handful that don't drive nicely make things really uncomfortable. So can you tell our listeners, what are some of the kind of basic driver error situations you see that they should be vigilant to try and avoid?
Sure. And I do a fair amount of car or motor vehicle versus pedestrian cases, but I would still say the majority of my cases involve two or more vehicles.
Right.
I find that the greatest proportion of accidents are caused by unsafe lane changes, or what I like to say is an unsafe move from a position of safety. So this could be a lot of things. You could be behind a stop sign or a yield sign or at a red light waiting to turn red in jurisdictions that allow you to do that. Or you could be driving down just a road or a highway and you're safe in your lane, but you want to move into another lane for whatever reason, whether it's to pass, whether it's to create a safe distance from vehicles in front of you. And I find that most of the accidents happen when people move from a position of safety and create a danger for somebody else. And that's usually because they didn't shoulder check, they didn't check their mirrors, they didn't, if they're waiting to turn behind a stop or a yield sign, they're not looking both ways, they're not making sure that the lane they're moving into is clear, they're not paying attention, they're in a hurry. So, I mean, I would say upwards of 75 to 80% of the cases I see are caused from a person moving from, I would just say, one lane to another and not doing that safely.
I can imagine that too. And are you finding at all that some of the new features on the car, like kind of the blind spot alert, is helping to alleviate this issue, or are people still ignoring them, or what?
Well, it helps me.
Yeah, I know it helps me.
But you have to have it turned on. In my vehicle, I know you can turn off that feature. So I imagine there's people out there that find it annoying and turn it off. Any additional safety feature can't hurt. Absolutely. I find that feature does help me. I also have a flashing light in my side mirrors that if there's somebody in my blind spot, it flashes while they're there. So I know not to change lanes when that light is flashing. And my vehicle is not a recent model. It's close to 10 years old. So these are not new safety features on vehicles. But no, I would like to think that those things help. But on the other hand, our roads and highways are a lot more congested than they were 20 years ago. So as we add more safety features, we add more vehicles to the road and create more potential hazards.
I think it's helpful the way you put that, when you're saying you're in a position of safety and then you're moving out of that position to do different things. It could be anything from U-turns or passing or stuff like that.
No, and that's really the way that you should be thinking, in my view, about any movement when you're driving. If you're safe where you are, make sure you're safe where you're going too, because you're really putting someone else in danger if you don't take appropriate steps to make sure that where you want to move to is a safe place to be with your motor vehicle. And when it comes to you and you running around town, that means if you're in a residential area with sidewalks, you need to be looking for bicyclists. You need to be looking for joggers. You need to be looking for normal pedestrians that are walking. You need to be looking out for kids in school areas that, kids aren't always going to act responsibly. They're going to dart out in traffic. They're going to cross a road sometimes without looking. So you need to be prepared for these things. And particularly when you're turning, a lot of the claims we see do involve pedestrians in crosswalks, somebody looking one way and they forget to look back the other. And lo and behold, somebody started to cross the road, or a bicyclist. I don't like bicyclists crossing in a pedestrian crosswalk, but it happens, and you need to look and you need to make sure that the road is clear before you turn into it, for sure.
The one that gets me most of the time, like the one that feels riskiest to me, is a driver is approaching to turn right. So a driver is approaching an intersection to turn right, and he naturally, or she, looks to the left to see if a car is coming. Meanwhile, I'm coming up the sidewalk from the right, and that they never look for me. And so I always try and make eye contact, or I don't go in front of the car, because unless I know that the person saw me, I'm worried, because so many times I've almost got hit. And then the other thing I've seen as a driver, I don't think bicyclists should be driving on our sidewalks. But when they come from that same direction, that is totally unexpected for a lot of people, and they're moving fast. So you really have to stop. A lot of people I notice don't stop at the stop sign. They do a roll and keep going. So you really got to stop, look to the left, but also please look to the right.
Well, bicyclists on sidewalks are a great example of what we start off with, which is speed. Because if somebody drives on a crosswalk or on a sidewalk and carries on into the crosswalk on a bicycle, they're probably moving a lot faster than your top speed when you're jogging. They can close onto that intersection very quickly, even though you might have passed them on the road a few hundred meters back. So I don't like that either, for that reason, that you're watching for pedestrians and runners if you're doing your job, I think, but you're not necessarily counting on somebody on a bike going 35 kilometers an hour whipping into a crosswalk. And that's not necessarily fair, even though our law in this province still considers a bicyclist a pedestrian. So go figure.
Yeah. And today I was walking to work and I got passed 2 or 3 times by scooters going at really fast speeds, electric scooters. So now that's a whole other thing to watch for on our sidewalks and roads.
Yeah, and yet our provincial government is talking about, and we're in Ontario here, they're talking about making it more difficult to get bike lanes. And at least in a bike lane, that there might be a bicycle there and you can account for it. My normal route home, there's a bike lane on Ottawa Street before I turn onto the artery taking me to my house. And I know there's a bike lane there. So I'm always checking my mirror to make sure that there isn't a bike coming up before I turn right. And more importantly, I'm trying to pay attention to see if I actually pass a bicyclist as I'm approaching that intersection. Because if I pass somebody, then I should be thinking that, well, they might be catching up to me in the bike lane and I need to account for that.
We're kind of lucky in Kitchener-Waterloo in our region, because fortunately our local governments have been kind of committed to putting in more bike lanes. And I hope they keep doing that, and especially kind of the gold standard ones that are separated from the road. So I have my fingers crossed that keeps happening. Okay, well, like last time, we're kind of burning through our time. Is there anything else that you wanted to let us know about before I turn to the question that I ask every guest?
Yeah, one thing I'd want to bring up, John, and you asked it at the outset about speed and how that can cause an accident. And I want people to appreciate that while speed is often a factor in causing an accident, or at least, preventing people from preventing the accident because they're going too fast. Speed on its own is usually only the cause of an accident when you're going at a speed that in this province we would call stunt driving, or the case law that I deal with will say the person is a speeding bullet. And what that means is you could have a responsible driver at an intersection governed by a stop sign, and they're waiting to turn. And they look to their left and they see that the road is clear, and they look to their right and they see that the road is clear. They look back to the left and they see a vehicle in the distance. It's really far away. So their immediate reaction is, oh, that vehicle's so far away, I can turn, no problem. And then they enter into their turn thinking they've got plenty of time, but they didn't realize is that person was going, 120 kilometers an hour in a 60 kilometer an hour zone. And they didn't anticipate the rate of closure on the intersection. So that's the type of case where even though you had a stop sign and you weren't supposed to pull out, that driver might attract some liability because they were going way, way, way too fast. It usually won't be a complete absolution of liability for the person pulling up from the stop sign, because you should be able to gauge somebody's speed before you pull out. But that's the type of case where otherwise you're doing everything right. You're in your lane. You haven't left your lane. You're going in the right direction, but you're just going so fast that people aren't accounting for it. And it's really bad sometimes with motorcycles, in part because they're so small. It's harder to gauge their speed. You have to watch them longer. So that's why you see a lot of motorcycle accidents, because, some people, not all, that like to drive motorcycles like to go really fast when they think they've got an open stretch of highway. And not everybody pays attention long enough to see how fast they're going. So listen, if you're out there and you're going twice the speed limit or more, you might not be able to do anything to prevent an accident if somebody else doesn't gauge your speed appropriately. So that's a risk you're putting on yourself, and you're putting on everybody else there that's out there. So please don't speed.
Yeah, and I actually, not too long ago, I was on our expressway in town, which is kind of circular, so there's curves on it. And a couple cars went by and they were racing. And then one of them kind of beeped at somebody and then just did a little kind of shimmy, and that made him spin. Luckily, he didn't get in a major accident or hit anybody, but he kind of spun and ended up on the side of the road. And so, yes, you can cause other people to be in a collision, but you can be in a collision yourself or slide off the road just by speed alone. And a quick point about stunt driving for people outside of our country. So stunt driving, I think, is 50 kilometers an hour over the speed limit, which is about 30 miles per hour over the speed limit. So start to get up to those speeds and you're taking a chance on yourself and everybody around you.
That's right. And in our province, there's immediate penalties in terms of license suspensions and impounding your vehicle. So for those of you that are outside Ontario, please understand if you visit, and we want you to visit, yes. Don't go 50 kilometers over the posted speed limit because you might lose your car.
Okay, well, here we are at the end of the interview. And from the last time, Gord, there's a question we ask every guest in a context where we all have areas of wellness that are important to us, but not enough time to focus on all of them at any given time. So we do a mini wellness check-in. So today now, are you currently neglecting an area of wellness in your life, Gord? And if so, can you think of even one thing that you could do to foster wellness in that area?
I could eat better, John. I don't take enough control over my own food intake, and the other people in my family might occasionally buy unhealthy food. So if it's there, I eat it. So I should probably take more control over my own diet.
I'm struggling a bit with that now. Fortunately for me, after kind of years of getting a habit of eating better food, I generally eat nutritious food. But my problem lately is I've been snacking after dinner and it's not the greatest stuff. So I'm with you and I got to work on that. A quick point I saw today that was interesting was that there's a fitness person who's on our show sometimes, and I follow her on Instagram, and she put up a post about like the average person and some of the bad habits we have. And I think one of them was that a lot of people eat more grams of sugar than protein in a day, which is scary. So Yeah, I personally have found through my experience that eating nutritious food in moderation is when I feel the best. So I wish you the best of luck at that, because I think you'll have results where you'll feel a lot better.
I hope so. My family just buys too much shawarma poutine. So that's
Okay, but that is so good.
it is. It really tastes great.
All right.
And I avoid fries whenever I can, but I can't stop eating that stuff.
Well, Gord, thanks so much for 2 really interesting interviews. I appreciate your time.
Thanks, John. Thanks for having me.
This is info for new listeners. The points I'm about to make, you can find them in past episodes or in my book, Accidentally Well by John Webster, which I invite you to read. But at high level, just a quick explanation why we cover so many topics on this show, a wide spectrum. I had an epiphany about wellness and how to achieve it. There's 3 steps to it. First, identify my categories of wellness, my areas of wellness. Second, figure out real activities you can do to foster each area. And hey, start doing those activities. And third, develop a wellness check-in. The wide spectrum relates to step 1, my categories of wellness, my areas, because I have 8. Artistic, environmental, spiritual, physical, intellectual, economic, social, and mental. These are all areas that are important to me for my wellness. And that's why in some shows we're talking about physical wellness. Sometimes we talk about spiritual, sometimes social, we talk about mental, we talk about artistic. All these things are intertwined. So enjoy.
Move that body like we're meant to do. It's a new year and it's a great time to reevaluate your life. So I found this article, New Year's resolution ideas for 2025, and I thought they were really interesting. So should I just read them out?
You should, but as a quick point, I don't really like New Year's resolutions. I'm not a big fan of that approach. I think in part because, you just see so many times people, they set a resolution and it might be to do X for so many months or to lose this much weight or to go to the gym this many times. And then when they don't do it, they say, I failed. And then they just stop altogether.
Yeah, like I really like doing new things all throughout the year, trying these new challenges. But I agree with you. Sometimes they're just way overwhelming, these New Year's resolutions.
But it's not just overwhelming. When they stop, they give up altogether.
Right.
But if they weren't treating it like a resolution, but just something they want to try and they can try again without it being like a test, I have to do it for 100 days or whatever. Now, having said that, I do often refresh in the new year. Like you said, it's a great opportunity. And you also mentioned that you really liked a lot of these.
Yeah, I do.
So let's go through them all, but maybe not treat them as something that has to be a resolution, but just great ideas throughout the year.
Okay. Drink enough water. Move more, sit less. Make plans to explore and travel. I love that one. Prioritize eco-friendly choices. Volunteer more often. Adopt an attitude of gratitude. Send handwritten letters. Spend 5 minutes a day cleaning. Call mom, siblings, grandparents, or more. Pick a time to wake up and stick to it. Develop a skincare routine. Live simply. Consume less. Be consistent with meal times. Perfect one recipe. Turn on music instead of TV. Remember your goals and the big picture. Set a monthly budget. Try something new. Take breaks more often. Floss every day. Practice intentional breathing. Ditch one bad habit. Create a bedtime routine. Get in touch with your creative side. Last one, make time for self-care.
This is great. And what I really like about this, I want you to save that, because you might know that in my book, at the end, I have the 8 categories of wellness. And as I came across activities that I kind of connect to each of those areas, I would put them on a bullet point list. And I keep trying to develop that list over time. I could put almost every one of those on my
something
list.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
They all connect to some area of wellness.
Yeah, because you were like, are there some that you don't like? And I'm like, no, I really do like every single one of them.
I think they're fantastic.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's a great, because the thing is, a lot of times when people talk about wellness, especially when people ask me about work-life balance or talk about work-life balance, when I kind of poke a prod a bit to try and get a better understanding of what they're looking for, very few people talk about actual activities. Like, 'cause there's got to be a formula or there's got to be an equation, or there's got to be so many hours of some category. But very few people talk about actual things that you can do.
Yeah.
Which is why we ask the question of every guest where we say, is there an area of your life of wellness that's lacking? And can you think of even one thing you could do to improve wellness there? This
There you
list
go.
has so many great
25.
things.
Yeah. Like the one I don't do is develop a skincare routine. I don't really do anything like that, except I have really nice lotion that I put on after a shower. But, maybe I should do that.
Yeah. And, on the physical side, just to kind of move that body. I have had historically, I started to get problems with my teeth over the last 10 or 15 years because I wasn't taking care of them very well for a long time. Well, I've recently had a lot of work done to kind of correct a lot of it. And I am finding time for my routine. Like when I go to bed at night, I feel this is good. I'm back to, I have a second chance to keep them in good shape. So I floss and I brush.
And the thing is, you said that this doesn't seem to be a lot of move that body, but taking care of that body, I think, is part of moving that body. And
I
a
agree.
lot of this is taking care of yourself.
I agree. So what a great list and a great reminder, both of some things to think about as you start the new year, some things to think about throughout the year, and real activities, kind of simple thoughts, activities that you can actually do to make yourself feel better. Please remember that we're not providing advice. We hope to inspire you to work towards balance, and we urge you to consult with qualified people if you need advice. The people on the show are speaking in their personal capacities. Their views expressed are their own, and don't represent the views or opinions of their outside contacts, their employers, or anyone else. We try to get things right, but we can't guarantee everything we say is correct, or that the things we talk about will work for you. Let's be well together, and let's be sure to do that in a safe way.
And it's sign-off time. It's Sheila here with John.
Hello, Sheila.
Hi, John. I feel like I have had a very balanced week this week. I've kind of done something social, something economical, something for myself. So I'm very proud of my week.
Oh, very, very good, Sheila.
So my workouts, I worked out a lot more this week. I'm eating better in the sense that I feel like I was eating pretty well, but I tried to get rid of like the crappy food, and I'm also trying not to eat as much. So that's going pretty well. I started reading Tess this week.
Oh.
Now, the history of Tessa the D'Urbervilles, I read in high school, and I absolutely hate it. Like,
Right.
I have horrible memories of this book, but I'm really enjoying it. And I do feel like you need a certain maturity to enjoy it, to understand what's going on.
Yeah, I just read it recently myself, which I think is why you're reading it, because I was talking about it.
Yeah.
And I had a lot of different thoughts about that book. It wasn't what I was expecting, and it's not a happy ending book, but it's very interesting, and I really felt for Tess.
Oh my gosh, I feel for her so bad.
Yeah.
And I'm not even halfway through.
Yeah, and one of the things I love is that these things happen to her, but her character still keeps shining through.
Yeah. Yeah. So I am really enjoying that. We planned our trip this week.
We did.
We are going to Bosnia and Croatia in July for my nephew's wedding. So we're making it a trip, and we're going to go along the coast. I've been thinking about this for about 6 weeks now, getting anxious about planning and organizing and talking to people, and other people are doing their plans. And we just kind of whipped it together this weekend and got everything done. So
Well, once the ball started rolling, and once you're looking at Airbnbs and you're trying to decide on how many days here and how many days there, it doesn't make sense to me to be like looking at all that and then say, okay, let's come back in 2 weeks and figure it out, because even with Airbnbs, they might not be there in 2 weeks.
yeah, everything changes.
So, one domino fell, then the next, and it's really exciting. I'm really looking forward to this.
Really, I'm so looking forward to it. So that's exciting. I got some baby time, and I also got some social friend time. So what about you, John? How was your week?
I had a good week. I had a really busy weekend. And so, part of me would be like, oh, I worked all weekend. And it was on all kind of haphazard stuff. Mm-hmm. So I worked on a bunch of podcast stuff, but not the normal stuff. There's a bunch of kind of logistical stuff I'm working on in the background. I did that. And then we did that trip. And so that had me looking at all kinds of stuff. And you worked Saturday night, and I kept looking at that. Essentially, on Saturday, I kind of just woke up, and it was either exercising or working on stuff all day. And yet still, by the end of the day, I felt good because I felt like I got something done. So, even though it wasn't like restful in one way, it rested my mind because so much got done. And it's not a New Year's resolution, but last week I really did try and kick back in all the different areas of physical. Mm-hmm. I'm doing core, I'm doing strength, I'm doing running, trying to watch what I eat, trying to be re-energized on that. Most of last week, I was very sore.
Yeah.
My muscles are sore and tired. I'm still sore and tired, but now I'm just starting to feel that energy.
Good.
And I think in like 2 weeks, I'm going to get that energy feeling again. And so I'm really excited. I don't know what to say. It was really hard working weekend, hard working week. But having said that, lots of rewards.
I agree. It was great. So I hope you all enjoyed the show, and we will talk to you next week. That is it for today's show. Please try and make wellness a priority.
You deserve it.
If you feel the need to talk to someone or ask for help, please do that.
Accept yourself for the person you are.
So long.
Adieu.
Auf Wiedersehen.
Goodbye.